the senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the bill.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I've heard a lot of misconceptions here, and I just want to clear a few things up. First of all, if you're from a county where you lose 150 students, your $1.6 million is gone like that and then some in 1 year, just to be very clear. Just to step back from this a little bit, I'm new to this body, but you know, when I have a bill that's about a veterans issue, I reach out to a veteran, just like I've done with my colleague from Brook. When I have a bill that's about volunteer fire departments, I reach out to my colleague, just like I've done with the senator from Nicholas. You know, I learned a long time ago from my grandpa that you don't need to have all the answers, but you need to know where to go to find those answers. You need to go to people with relevant experience to try and work together and find a solution. And I think about this bill. We have 3 former local Board of Education members in this body, Mr. President, representing 3 different counties from both political parties, some growing counties, some struggling counties. None of us were consulted about this bill. None of us provided any policy suggestions. None of us are rabid partisans who view things under those terms, who refuse to work with folks. None of us disagree that education reform is needed. I think you would find that all of us agree about that. Yet none of us support this bill. Why is that? I have to ask, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, I've heard it said here today, I've heard it over the past 10 days, we need more local control. I want to know what you mean by that. What do you mean that we need more local control? In whose hands do you intend to put control locally? Teachers? Because they oppose this bill. Service personnel? Because they oppose this bill. Superintendents? They oppose this bill. Boards of education? They oppose this bill. Local school improvement councils? Talk about local, that's about as local as it gets. And the ones I've heard from oppose this bill. Coaches oppose this bill. You know, I read newspaper reports, and I read a newspaper report from December 17th. And the senator from Jefferson was quoted as saying, "I don't know why we can't trust the administrators and local school boards that our citizens are electing. Let's give them a chance to fix the problem. They're closer to the students than the parents, and they understand what the students need." Agreed. Agreed, absolutely. The reality of the situation is that local education officials oppose this bill. Last week I called witnesses right here in front of each and every one of us. Based on testimony today, I'm wondering if folks listened to that at all. Because we heard from local officials right here, Mr. President, all of whom opposed this bill. Greenbrier County Schools, Fayette County Schools, Kanawha County Schools, the West Virginia School Board Association, all opposed. All local education officials who are speaking loudly, and I wonder, why aren't we listening when we say we care about local control? Now, I remember another newspaper report from December 16th. The senator from Jefferson was quoted as saying, "For too long the decisions have come from the top down, and I look forward to finally giving teachers a voice because they know and understand the problems that are holding our kids back." And again, I couldn't agree more. But the reality is that those teachers are overwhelmingly and adamantly opposed to this bill, even if it means that they do not receive a raise. I think that's because they know what holds our students back is outside the school, as the senator from Logan talked about eloquently. What holds them back is generational poverty. What holds them back is a poor state without the resources to help those who absolutely need it the most. Drugs, drugs, and more drugs. Absent parents. A lack of discipline, a lack of stability, a lack of support at home. These are the things that are holding some of our students back. And I'll be the first to admit that the bill does some good things in some of those areas. The pay raise, the sick leave, the enrollment floor, the funding for support personnel, those are good provisions. The problem is you gotta know to be able to look at this holistically is that the charter and ESA provisions threaten to undo all that good work in those other provisions by undermining the entire public education system. Instead of decentralizing the system, it adds new layers. It adds a new layer of statewide educational bureaucracy in the form of a charter school commission with the power to overrule local county boards of education. It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me at all, Mr. President. You would not try and do the electrical work in your house if you were not an experienced electrician. Yet you're attempting to reform public education without involving educators. It's a recipe for disaster. Now, we know what's going to happen here today. This is going to pass, despite the objections of the only members of this body who have recently worked in local education, despite the best advice of superintendents, treasurers, and teachers, despite the stated need for local control. My prayer today is that the House, which is closer to the people, will listen to them and do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. President.